Welcome back to TLT Talks. We got a good one for you today. Lots of controversy out there, lots of things going on. This current administration is interested in doing a couple different things around taxation, things around real estate. And so we've got a couple guests on today to help talk through that. Let me take a moment to introduce my man. Here we go, coming on. And also, Jason, there should be a little thing there that says, Max.
What's up, buddy?
How's it going, my man? How's everything?
Everything's going well.
Beautiful. Let's just wait for Jason to come on.
Absolutely.
Instagram and world out there, we're doing something new today. We're trying to get two people on at the same time. Mr. Zegans, there should be a note there that says, join, request to join. I got you, Jason. I'm inviting you. Oh, Instagram, you did it. Jason, how we doing? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
We got Jason. We lost Max. Technology, baby. I love it. Technical difficulties. There we go.
Max is back.
There we go. Look at that Instagram. You heard me. Multiple people at the same time. I love it. I love it. Welcome, gents. Welcome. Hope everybody's doing well and is healthy. I hope your businesses and your lives are fruitful. I know both of you very well, so I know both of those things are in fact happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me take a minute to introduce our folks today. We have Jason Zegans, trusted counsel for the Lidbag team and a good majority of its clients, and we have Max Sherman, one of our top agents, a good friend of mine, a brother, who's killing it in the investment game, and so he's going to talk a little bit about that. Let me tell you why I have these boys on. There's been a lot of controversies, as I started saying, with the new administration, things they want to do. Taxes, there's things on real estate. The one we're going to focus on today is the 1031 exchange. There is a proposal. No one knows how real it is yet or if it's going to happen or what, but there is a proposal to eliminate or augment the 1031 tax exchange. So because of the importance and the impact that can have on the real estate community, I thought today we'd spend a little bit of time talking through what is it, why is it important, why does it matter, what could be the implications. And so with that, Jason, why don't you just share a few words with our viewers about who you are and why the hell anyone should care about you? And then just jump in, what's a 1031 and why should people do it?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure working with you guys for years and years, man. It feels, an eternity. Actually, it's almost been.
Dude, it's 11 years. 11 years. It just hit me the other day. It's crazy.
Talking with one of your clients yesterday morning, that Jordan, with, and he said, "How did you meet Eugene?" I said, "We used to play basketball too."
That's right.
A little, but
through basketball and real estate.
Yeah. So it's been a long time. It's been a pleasure. Always great to work with you guys. I'm Jason Zegans from the Zegans Law Group. I started my own real estate practice about 12 or 13 years ago at this point. And we specialize in real estate. We do everything from soup to nuts, real estate related. And we're here this morning to talk about 1031s. A lot of our clients, depending on market fluctuation, do 1031s and are currently active in the 1031 market. Like you said, predominantly because of the fear and the change of these rules, and some of our clients kind of want to get them done now. So what is a 1031 exchange? 1031 stands for the section of the IRS tax code that allows one to sell a property without paying capital gains as long as you are buying a replacement property. What is a replacement property? It can be anything that's used for investment purposes. It doesn't have to be a condo for a condo. You could sell a supermarket, commercial, and buy a hotel. You can sell an apartment and buy a condo. You can buy raw land.
Uh-oh.
Is that me buffering? No.
I think so.
A 1031 allows somebody to take an investment property that they own and sell it and buy something else without paying capital gains taxes. Why is that important? Nobody likes to pay taxes, right? That's number one. Number two, it decreases your buying power on the next purchase. So if you sell something for $1 million and you have to pay capital gains taxes, you now don't have that money to reinvest into whatever you're rolling it into. So 1031s are great for people that just want to sell whatever they own and get into a different type of real estate investment, whether it's, again, selling a co-op apartment and getting into something that's not residential. It gives one the ability to sell something without paying taxes. It kicks the can down the road to a later point in time, at a point when you don't continue to 1031. So you could 1031 and 1031 and 1031 4, 5, 6 times down, 20, 30 years from now, and you ultimately don't have to pay taxes, capital gains taxes, until you sell, ultimately do not 1031 again. So it's a great mechanism to keep real estate investment alive in your family, pass things down from generation to generation, and not pay capital gains taxes up front.
Yeah,
So,
amazing. What an accurate explanation, or thorough, I meant to say. What a thorough explanation. So couple things to extract there. So number one, we get the slot. Do I have to buy the same thing again? So no, you don't. You could sell any kind of real estate and buy any kind of different real estate, which is really great. And look, part of the reason to own real estate is because in the last 100 years, it's basically the second performing asset class, only behind the S&P index. But the S&P index, you can't write down appreciation. You can't defer capital gains taxes. You can't draw on income. You can't have a tenant paying down your mortgage. So, for those people looking to invest and build wealth, for the reality is most people that got really wealthy or just minorly wealthy, it's they have a job, they do something to make money, and then they take that money and they invest it somewhere. Real estate happens to be an excellent vehicle, and the 1031 is an excellent tool as part of that vehicle. Jason, I'm so sorry. I forgot to ask you in your intro about a fun fact. What's a fun fact, brother?
Fun fact, man.
Fun fact.
So I'm 43 years old. I have 23 years left until potentially I'm eligible to make the senior PGA Tour.
Let's go, man. Let's
working.
Go, baby.
I'm a mediocre golfer at best.
Listen, Mickelson just did it, right? Mickelson just did it, 50 years old, oldest ever. Listen, I'm a Tony guy, man. If you want it, it's just about the why. Let's go. What do we got?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, cool. One more thing I want to talk about, Jason, is talk to me about timeline, right? So we get a lot of confused sellers, seller buyers, developers, etc., that tend to fumble the timeline, or they come to us too late in the process. So I'd love it if you can go from A to Z, sort of what's the timeline, and including some tips, do's and don'ts. Make sure you're focused on this. Stay away from the, as Keith Cunningham calls it, help us avoid some of the dumb texts.
Yep. So here's the bottom line. I'm going to keep it really simple because it can get a little granular, right? Okay. 2 main considerations or timelines that you have to adhere to, okay? The first one is the identification period of 45 days, okay? It runs from the time which you close on the sale of the relinquished property, meaning the sale property, right? So as soon as you close day 1, that's when you will decide to do a 1031 exchange, sign a 1031, the money goes from you as seller into a qualified intermediary, which is basically a title company, who holds the money, and then you first identify properties. You have 45 days from the closing of that sale of the real estate to nominate properties that you intend to close on. Okay, within that 45 days, you can nominate properties, take them off the list, add different properties back on as you're exploring what's available out there in the market that you think, fits your investment, taste or profile. And thereafter, after you nominate and the 45 days have gone up, have expired, you have to close within 180 days collectively. Okay, so from the closing of your initial sale, you have to close on the purchase of your property within 180 days. So everybody says, sure, it's a little bit of a tight time period. Not really. I mean, you have 45 days and you're going to shop around with you guys and, in advance. You're going to have clients that are selling pieces of property. We don't decide to do a 1031 exchange until then, so you start seeing what's out there on the market. Go into it blind, right? Where you just sell and you have zero clue what's on the market. You're going to go into it knowing, roughly what's out there, what I'm looking for, whether it's condo co-op, a piece of a potential real estate deal, etc. And so you'll have time to gear up and then test the market out and nominate properties in 180 days to close. I mean, it's, a pretty standard closing timeline. If you think about closings happen anywhere from 60 to 120 days, it's for sure enough time to get the deal done.
Right. If I'm a seller, when do I need to start the process?
I would start the process, meaning looking around, educating yourself.
Sorry, when do I have to file for the 1031? Is it just any day before closing?
Literally the day before I could do it.
So the paperwork takes 24 hours. You know, the closing set for June 1st. I can come to you May 27th, fill out the paperwork, file it, and I'm legible. I'm good.
Yep, 100%.
Amazing.
You sign it, put the money into a 1031, and really the worst thing that happens, right, is you decide to do a 1031, you pay the fees, which I'll talk about in 2 seconds, and you look out there in the market to do your identification. You don't really find anything you like that you really want to invest into. You cancel the 1031, and the 1031 company sends back the money after the identification period's over. So it's not like there's really a harm to do it. The fees to do a 1031 for most companies, most of the major companies that I use, it's $1,500, $750 on each side. So the worst case scenario is you decide to do a 1031, you spend $750 to do it, the money goes into an escrow account. You decide that you don't like anything, you spend $750.
And the money that you're talking about in escrow is the capital gains money. So if the capital gains was 400 grand, it's the 400 grand that goes into that account, right?
Yeah, it's the gross sales proceeds from your transaction. Correct.
Exactly. Cool. So if I'm a seller and I'm thinking about buying anything, essentially the maximum risk is under $1,000, right? And if you just made a couple of $100 grand and you're not quite sure yet, you know, is there something to buy, not something to buy? The worst case scenario is your gross proceeds are tied up for about 45 days and it costs you $1,000. Not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
Cool.
One caveat is your proceeds are really tied up through 180 days.
Right.
Yeah. Because they can't close out the exchange for 180 days.
I see. I got it. Okay, cool. So, I mean, the truth is this. If you're working with somebody like us, we're going to know in advance. We're doing a 1031 or we're not, right? If you're working with somebody like us, shameless plug, work with us. If you're working with somebody like us or anyone that's really, experienced in real estate in the 1031, your broker will know this. Your attorney will know this. Anyone that knows this game will be like, hey, just make sure that you know what you're doing so your money's not tied up for, a period of time. Cool. Jason, thank you very much. Max, I'd love to go to you if you want to give a quick intro of who you are. What's your story?
Yeah, I've been doing, real estate for about 5 years. Had the pleasure of being on this team, working with you for over a year. And it's been amazing. You know, the knowledge and just the activity has been great. And working with Jason, man, I do not know where I would be without him.
Nice.
So,
a fun fact. I won't forget. A fun fact, Max.
A fun fact that me and you probably go back 20 years ago.
That's true.
In Brooklyn, South Brooklyn, and Reynolds, and not knowing who you are and competing against you. Now, 20 years later, we are reunited and we work together selling real estate.
That's right.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. It's amazing how things come back together. Actually, most people don't know this. So Gene Cody, one of my dear friends, him and I actually dropped out of college when I was younger to pursue real estate. I was 2 years in and I was like, you know what? What am I doing here? I'm going to graduate. I'm going to get a job. That's not what I want. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, yada, yada. So when I was 20 years old, myself and my dear friend Gene Cody, we started a real estate company together. We started E&E Enterprises, right? Eugene Enterprises. I'll save you the whole sob story, but it didn't really go anywhere, yada, yada. And then here we are. I run a really successful real estate team. He's a successful developer. My best friend, we get to work together every day. It's really cool, but it's funny how the universe and energy, brings people together. Very cool. Very, very cool. Very cool. So Max, we just talked to Jason about 1031. We just talked about the what is it and the why and the timeline. I'd love to lead on you for your real estate expertise, right? And talk to us about from your standpoint, why this is a good idea, any tips you want to share, et cetera.
Got it. Well, listen, every sales, you need an exit strategy, right? So when you put the property on the market, you have to know what your exit strategy is, right? So if you're doing an investment property and it's a 1031, you need to have, if it's an apartment, if it's a townhouse, whatever case may be, you want to know what's your exit strategy. So when you list the property, you just want to have an idea what's on the market, right? Just kind of, seeing what's available. And then, you really start looking and aggressively when the property is in contract. Right? Usually you have a typical 60 to 90 days closing. So within that time frame is when you start really kind of like searching for what's your next move. Are you going from a condo to a from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, from a townhouse to 2-family, from a 2-family to a 4-family, because you have to get a property that's equal or greater than. So you want to have an idea of what you're doing. Also, the market is moving really quick, so you don't want to be too aggressive because a closing can take a longer time than your typical 60 days. But you definitely want to get on the phone with brokers, start seeing the activity, start seeing what the prices are at, start knowing what your negotiating power is. And then when you close, like Jason said, you have your 45-day period. That's when you have to be kind of like on the phone and, start kind of negotiating and putting your offers in and start, seeing what your 3 properties are going to be.
Right.
And in a market like we are now, that's a seller's market, and it's moving really quick. You have to, you definitely have to be working with the best brokers. Definitely know, your negotiating power, and you have to be aggressive. You have to be, you have to the market for sure.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. So let me elevate this for a second. So, if there's anything to take away from this podcast, I don't even know. I never know what to call this thing. Is it a podcast? Is it a show? Is it live? Like, what's the appropriate language? Podcast. We'll go with podcast for today. If there's anything to take away from this podcast, I feel like I need a big mic and like headphones. It's timeline, right, guys? It's timeline. So number one, if I was to give it to you on a football field, right, 20, 40, whatever, or just in a linear format. If you are thinking it's time to sell your property, you've been told that it's a good time to take advantage of the market, yada yada, whatever. First thing you do before you make that decision is you want to look around. The thing I want to buy, is there something out there, right? And that's usually synonymous with getting your team together. And the team for this is going to be 4. Usually I'm talking about 3. Usually I'm saying that it's the mortgage broker, the real estate broker, and the attorney. Here you need a 4th component. You need to be talking to an accountant, because there's all kind of questions that are going to come up. Does this qualify for a 1031? But I'm under an LLC. But there's going to be all these questions. And the truth is, your typical real estate team can answer those questions, but not definitively. And the person that can really ultimately be held accountable for the taxation questions are your accountant, right? You can do whatever you want until they come knocking. And if they come knocking, you just got to be prepared with proper documentation and comfortable in your decisions, right? So from a timeline perspective, if you're thinking, all right, I think it's time to trade this asset. This real estate property has done really well for me. I want to take advantage of the gains, and I think I want to sell this and buy something else. Or I want to sell it and just take, my money, and I'm okay to pay the tax. I don't want to buy something else. First thing you want to do is you want to have your discovery calls. You talk to a broker about, if I want to do this, what else is out there? Is it a good time to trade up? You do your discovery. You talk to an attorney about good faith closing costs, right? And like, if I sell this thing, what are my actual cash proceeds? On the Lidback team, I actually personally built out a tool. It's just a simple Excel that shows, here would be your cash proceeds, here would be your net profit, here would be your proposed capital gains. So, if there's anybody that's interested in that conversation, we actually built out a quick tool for it. So number 1 is discovery. Number 2, if you've made a decision that you are in fact going to look to do this, to sell and maybe buy, is you want to get the property listed. And while it's listed, it's just a little too early to look seriously for that property, because if you find something, you can't make a move yet. So it just, as Max said really correctly, you take a look first. You just see if there's, generally speaking, something that's out there. You do your due diligence. You do your discovery. You get your property listed. Once you're in contract, you'll get an on or about closing date. And we propose, or we suggest rather, that you start looking more aggressively about 30 to 60 days from closing date. That's what we propose, right? That's close enough to where you won't jeopardize your ability to search. Because the truth is, if you find something that you like, but it's 6 months out, that hurts your negotiating power. If you go to a seller and say, look, I'll buy your property for less, but I don't want to close for 6 months, you're not going to be taken very seriously. You might get lucky, but it's not the best way to go about it. So on a very linear timeline, do your discovery, get your property listed. Once you get closer, once you get to that 30 to 60 day mark, at that point, obviously you speak to your attorney during all the other conversations about, hey, let's make sure we don't forget this 1031 thing. And then you start more aggressive looking at things, and it's completely fine to make offers prior to closing. Actually, Jason, let me confirm that with you. We've always done this in a way where you can make offers on the next property before closing, it doesn't really matter. It's just that you then run the risk of if the sale property doesn't close, you can be exposed on the other side. But ultimately, there's nothing in the 1031 that says you can't make an offer on the new place before closing on the current place, correct?
No, not at all.
Cool.
And I didn't want to overcomplicate things. There is another tool that you can do. It's a little bit more complicated, but you can do a reverse 1031 exchange. Right? Basically does it the reverse way, where you buy the acquisition property up front using your own cash, and then you sell your replacement property, and that goes in, and it basically does a reversal. You need to be able to fund and buy the new property first, either with a loan or without, before you sell the property. So not everybody has the ability to do that. But
so for at a high level for our sellers out there, is there any implication or constraint other than money? So let's say I own an investment property. I see another one I like. There's nothing stopping me if I do have the cash, the money. Nothing stopping me from buying the new property and then selling and doing the 1031. The constraint is cash. Most people, when they do this, they need the cash from the proceeds to buy the next one. But if you have the cash, you can do a reverse 1031 quite easily, right?
Yeah, and you can also buy the replacement, a reverse replacement property. Well, not replacement. You can also do a reverse exchange where you're buying the new property with financing.
Right. So
you can do that. The only caveat that makes it a little tricky is the ratios of debt to equity need to match on the buy and the sale. So it gets a little bit more complicated.
Right. Cool. So again, guys, there's a lot of ways to skin this cat.
Yep.
The one thing of this entire conversation that I hope you realize is that this cat is worth skinning. I don't know if that's a great analogy, but we went down the road. Here we are. So, but there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, but it's worth the process of skinning the cat. Methodical 1000 says so. It's 45 days after contract is signed to nominate the new property. Yes, that's correct. Once you close on the current property, you have up to 45 days to nominate the new property. Up to 3. And there's actually other ways to do it too. There are a couple of variations of things, but a very high level, that's what it is. Max, second question I'd love to tap into your expertise is, we started this by saying there could be implications. I wanted to be really thorough around what's a 1031, why, and the timeline. I think those are really, really important to lead up to this next and final question, which is the current administration is proposing to make changes, right? So I know you're very studied on this because you work with a lot of investors, both individual, like, condo owners, and also in the way of building sales and yada yada. So what I'd love for you to weigh in on is, what have you heard or what have you read? None of us, myself or the viewers, will hold you accountable. But if for whatever you share, you don't work for Biden yourself personally, but from your research, from your research, can you share what are the proposed changes and what do you think could be the implications if they do get passed?
Sure. So again, do not quote anything I say. This is just from what I'm reading. But what the new Biden administration is trying to propose is that any proceeds, so on 1031 exchange, that exceeds over $500,000, it's eliminated. You could only gain the $500,000, and that's to make up, the $1.8 trillion dollar administration for education, early that. So what does that mean? That means that that the gains are going to be really small, right? In a market that's so hot right now, when you bought it low. And right now, you're seeing premiums of 20-30% over than it was pre-COVID. Your gains are going to be so much more. So what does that mean? Investors are not going to want to sell it, right? So especially if it's that high. So, there's going to be less activity on the market, right? There's going to be less development. If they need to increase cash flow, they're going to have to raise rents. So it could really be a big problem. Also, another thing that 10% on average, about 10% of all real estate transactions were 1031, with billions of that could be just eliminated. Out of that 10%, 85% were held by small-time investors, like he's an S corp. So what does that mean? So like the new millennials that are trying to build this wealth from 1031 to 1031, they won't have a chance to do it anymore, right? So that where the baby boomers kind of like, use this up and, created wealth, Now the new millennials that are trying to, follow that path will be eliminated. So
Yeah.
now it's going to be smaller type of properties, like, single family, condo, stuff like that. But we may not see mall shopping
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
and that's tough.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree, man. I mean, this market like really took off in January, and I always get the same, you and I always get the same questions, like why? How come the market's so hot? Well, partially the rate, right? Partially this slingshot return from COVID, where real estate dropped so quick, so fast, a range of people from your primary home buyer to your institutional investor realized that this asset class is trading way below market, and so everybody jump back in. Part of it is, we have Max and I working with several investors, some individual, condo owners, the smaller time fish, as Max is saying, and some that are bigger buildings that are looking to trade now and take advantage now before any of these changes take place. So, at a macro level, you have hyperinflation now because people are trying to get in ahead of the deadline. This whole, 30 or 40 years of real estate boom was in some way from the 1031 because, as Jason explained, you can kick the can down the road forever. And so ultimately, people are like, myself too, I have a dream of owning 50 doors in the next 10 years. And that's going to be partially my retirement account. I mean, I don't plan to sell, right? I want a long-term hold. However, for the last 20 or 30 years, this has been a common model. I personally have participated in 3 to 4 1031s with some of my investors where we buy something in a neighborhood that's, prominent and growing, etc. And once that neighborhood's peaked, we liquidate that stock and we buy a new stock, right? We go to the next booming neighborhood. And over time, people are kicking the can down the road and they're building this wealth. The other piece that's going to really suck for people is someone that's been doing this for 20 years, that has kicked the can down the road 3 or 4 times, that might at this point, because the capital gains adds up. So at this point, you might have people that have cap gains of, tens and 20s and hundreds of millions of dollars over 20 or 30 years of kicking the can down the road. This thing gets passed. And all of that market volume, the market does increase based on volume and the transference of wealth, and all of that gets stagnant. So we have hyperinflation that will then take us right to stagnancy, potentially, right? Now, the individual condo buyer, it's not that affected, right? Because it's kind of hard to exceed $500,000 of capital gains. If you bought $1 million property and you got some gains and you roll it into the next one, even if you do it 2 or 3 times, to exceed $500,000 of gains, not very easy. But still, now as an investor, if I think about which asset class do I want to contribute to, right? I might think twice. I might think twice about real estate because the 1031, there was conversation about being eliminated entirely. Then there was conversation around, the cap gains and the percentage of cap gains, and then there's capping the cap gains. So there's like 3 different things happening at once. And so look, the implication could be, right? The economy is a really delicate, complex thing, but the implication could be ultimately, we'll only know in 3 or 4 years, it's usually how it tends to play out, is that, this chatter created hyperinflation and then hyperstagnation, right? If it gets passed, could be everything's fine, right? It could be like, if we think about taxes, all of us complain when the taxes go up, but then they go up and it is what it is. And we all just carry on living our lives. We talk about how it's fair or unfair. And once a year we complain about what the tax bill is, but ultimately, it is what it is. And you continue on living your life. If there is a change with cap gains or 1031 or whatever, I think there will be some initial, outcry. But ultimately, the rules around real estate have changed so many times over the last 100 years. And the one thing that hasn't changed is that real estate is a constant vehicle of financial growth. So, gentlemen, thank you both so much. Jason, any final thoughts? Any final thought, closing remarks, tips, anything you want to share?
Yeah, just keep an open line of communication with us. I mean, we're here as a tool for you. Between my office, the 1031 companies that we use that are so well versed in what they do and all the IRC regulations, timelines, what you can do, what you can't do, what you can swap, debt leverage, and really all the technical stuff. So it's really, hey, I want to sell, I want to buy something else. Work with us and our teams, and we'll make sure to get this process done in a way that that it works for you.
Awesome, and we can certainly attest to that. We so many of our clients have benefited from success solely because they worked with Jason versus someone else. So many times we're in a bind, 2 a.m. phone calls, last minute rushes. Like, Max, my man, thank you so much for your time as well. Any closing remarks, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this Biden administration is definitely for real. You know, they definitely have huge plans for different infrastructures that's going to cost tons of money. So to offset that, you know, there are going to be some cuts. You know, if 1031 will be the cut, you know, right now the market is hot. You know, there's going to be huge gains. So definitely take advantage of that. It's, you know, this is the time to do so and not get out.
Yeah, I totally support that. If you're, this isn't like Max isn't saying, this isn't like a pushy sell now kind of thing. This is like, look, if you thought about selling in the next couple of years, like who knows what then looks like. Whereas now the market conditions are primed for record deals. I mean, we're setting record deals. Basically, almost every deal right now is a record deal. We're pricing some things at higher than pre-COVID prices and still getting bidding wars because, you know, our team, we know what we're doing. But ultimately, like, it's like if you did consider this, then don't procrastinate this decision, because in 6 months or a year, you know, some of these things that are taken for granted now may not be available anymore. So that's really wise, Max. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, for all your effort, all your hard work, and all the work we do together. Have a great day, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Have a good one, guys.